Hello, this is Angela with Parkrose Permaculture. Welcome back to Hausfrau Friday. This is part 4 of my 4-part series on parenting our unschooled teens into adulthood. I hope that you will check out those earlier segments. They are linked down in the description. Today, I want to talk about a phrase that I heard bandied about in unschooling circles for a long time when my kids were little, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit, and I didn't really trust it. But now that I have 2 adults, a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old, I'm in the thick of it enough that I know that those moms who came before me, they were correct. They were right. So you might have heard it said in unschooling circles, diplomas are overrated. And it is 1,000,000% true. And I want to talk about that a little bit today. When I went to college in 1997, I went to Grinnell College in Grinnell, Iowa, which at the time I was so drawn to it because it had self-governance and didn't really have rules. It didn't have gen ed requirements. It was a very free-thinking place, and I was such a rule follower. I was an incredible rule follower. I was very different in my late teens and early 20s than I am now. But I knew somewhere in the back of my mind that I wanted to become somebody different who was much more self-directed, was much more about questioning institutions. It was a long journey, but deciding to go to a school with self-governance was the first step in that. So back then in 1997, one of the most articulate, self-directed, and introspective people that I met in Grinnell was an unschooler. She got into Grinnell without having a college transcript, without having a diploma of any kind. And I just was always in awe of her self-confidence, her ability to speak for herself and to know her own mind when I was so kind of neurotic and unsure of myself and needed external validation via grades. So back then it wasn't called unschooling, but as she described the way that she was raised in which she could explore whatever she wanted, and her parents didn't have rules and restrictions on her. I recognize now that what that educational philosophy was unschooling. Probably her parents read a lot of John Holt. So she went to one of the top 12 liberal arts colleges in America at that time, a very academically rigorous school with no high school diploma. And she got in. That was not commonplace in 1997. It is quite commonplace now. You don't need a high school diploma to get into college or to be successful. You don't need a high school diploma to pursue higher education at whatever level it interests you. Diplomas are really overrated. I see a lot of folks who put their kids into public school once they hit their teenage years, once they hit high school, because they're thinking like, my kid needs a high school diploma. Like they have unplugged from the system, and I've questioned the institution of public school for so long, but now I'm panicking and like, my kid needs to go to high school or they won't be successful as an adult. They won't get into the college that they need. I have a college student. She doesn't have a high school diploma. She doesn't have any transcripts. In fact, just make up your transcripts. That's legit my advice. You know what your kids have studied. You and your teenagers sit down together and say, what would it look like if we built a high school transcript out of the things I have explored and studied over the last 4 years? Do that. There's nothing that says that you can't do that. In fact, there are lots of forms you can find online where you can craft your own high school transcripts. Your child is learning so much meaningful stuff as an unschooler. Just because it's not in the same sequence they would have learned it in public school doesn't mean they're not learning valuable things and have not become highly skilled and have not mastered many subjects. In fact, I would say building your own transcript as an unschooler is a great way to look at what you've learned and acquired over the last 4 years to help you maybe think about what you might want to study if you go to college. It gives you a chance to say, what have I really been interested in? And to look at it all on paper. It can be a really helpful exercise if you're trying to figure out what you want to study when you get to college. You could get your GED. In fact, this is what my eldest child did. If you have your GED, all kinds of scholarships and grants become available to you. In Oregon, there's the Oregon Promise Grant. California also has the California Promise Grant, which will cover your community college tuition for 2 years or 90 credits, I believe, if you get your GED and then immediately start community college. It's a wonderful resource. Now, the GED itself is a whole other level of frustrating I don't want to get into. You can take the exams in person or you can take them online. The system is incredibly frustrating if your child has a disability and needs accommodations. If you are interested in having me talk about that more, I am happy to do that with Ruth, since it was her GED process she had to go through, and a lot of the frustration was on her shoulders. I'm happy to expound upon that more in another video. Let me know if you want me to talk about it. I also want to say, as long as we're talking about standardized tests, if your kid has not taken standardized tests before because they're an unschooler and they haven't needed to jump through those hoops, you don't have to take your ACT or SAT. Most colleges now don't require it. Don't get me started on how the ACT and SAT are just a way of assessing how well you have processed a certain kind of cultural information. They're incredibly biased toward white affluent students, and they're not actually a good measure of what your child knows or their potential for academic success. So more and more colleges are dropping them. The ACT and SAT are kind of a good scam for those companies. They got themselves as a requirement for pretty much every college in the United States. That's great. You have to pay this private company a lot of money and take their test, and they encourage you to take the test over and over and over again starting your freshman year, paying the fee every time, because every time you take the test, your score goes up an average of 100 points. So that allows wealthy students who have the time and the finances to take the test many times to get an edge. It's really a game, and I have lots of opinions about standardized tests, including the GED. But I'll just say your kid can easily go to college without a diploma, without taking the SAT, without taking the ACT. Consider a portfolio for your child. Now, here in Oregon, they require state standardized testing in 5th, 8th, and 11th grade in order to be a real homeschooler here. Loads of unschoolers fly under the radar and their kids never take those tests and have no problem getting into college. But I do want to say the state has a loophole, not a loophole, an accommodation for kids with disabilities. They can put together a portfolio of their work instead of taking a standardized test. And I would encourage you, if you are looking at some institution and they're saying, we need this standardized test, we need this set diploma, say, could I present you with a portfolio of what my child has done instead? And lots of places will accept that. And again, in Oregon, they will accept that in lieu of standardized tests. An alternative assessment can include a portfolio. We need to realize as parents that the college landscape is changing. Many of us went to college thinking, I need to pursue that liberal arts education. It's about the experience of college. It's about what I'm getting out of those 4 years. And it's not really thinking about what are those 4 years giving me in terms of massive debt, in terms of, am I getting the quality of education that I'm paying for? Is my college degree and what I'm majoring in and studying actually equipping me to get a job when I get out? Today's kids are a lot more pragmatic. I talk to my kids about it extensively. Where do you want to go to college? Do you want to go to my alma mater? Do you want to, go away, or do you want to go to an Ivy League school? What do you want to do? All of them have said, well, my 11-year-old doesn't count because he's not really thinking about college, but my other 3 kids, we don't want to go into a lot of debt. We want to try and go into no debt. We want to get a bachelor's degree. We don't care. Let's go to state school. It is just a hoop we have to jump through to get to the graduate school program that we want to get to, or to get to the career that we want. It's not some kind of immersive life experience, right? It's just checking off boxes to get you to where you want to go. And I think that's such a really practical way to look at it, and so different than my own approach. And I think we've seen that in the college landscape in general. Today's generation is not willing to take on massive debt. They're thinking about what they are investing in terms of college and what the dividends will be for them. They are not willing to shackle themselves to the debt they have seen Gen Xers and millennials suffer through. And therefore, it gives them a kind of pragmatism. And also, I will say, unschoolers already have a rich cultural experience. They already have a rich social scene. They already have so much freedom in their exploration that maybe they don't see college as that escape from the institution of high school and a place to, stretch their wings and try and figure out who they are, and a chance to explore topics that they never could before, because they've had that their whole childhood. So college doesn't look the same as it did to folks in my generation. And because of that, colleges are really struggling. The pandemic really caused people to pump the brakes and say, is college right for me? Do I want to go right now? How much do I want to spend on this? And will it give me a good return on my investment? And so what we're finding is colleges are very much more flexible in letting kids in, and also letting in kids who have sort of an alternative upbringing, like unschoolers. In closing here, I want to say, I hope that you realize if you have raised your child to be an unschooler, you have raised them to question institutions. Many folks come to unschooling because they have deconstructed from their highly liturgical religious upbringing. Many folks come to unschooling because they have had really traumatic public or private school experiences, or maybe they came from a really rigid homeschooling, like maybe Charlotte Mason, or maybe maybe like classical conversations, or one of those kind of backgrounds, and they want something different for their kids, and they've questioned, why do we have these rules? Why do we have these procedures? When you are raising an unschooler, you are raising a child to be an independent thinker and a critical thinker and a skeptical person. You have taught your child that learning happens outside of formal, rigid, institutional settings. And that can make it challenging for your kid to want to dive into those settings and to put up with all of the inefficiencies and the bull in the system that they are now participating in. You may find your kid has a hard time in college, not because they're not smart enough, not because they're not, educated enough, not because they've learned the subject matter enough, but because they get frustrated with the inefficiencies in the system. They get frustrated with the ways that the system is failing them. They question the wasted time. They question the busy work. They question why they're having to spend money on a class when they could have just hacked that subject online and learned everything in 2 weeks on their own. I have found for my eldest kid, she's really frustrated, particularly with that last aspect. Why do I have to pay somebody a bunch of money to teach me something I could have taught myself online very quickly? Oh, I'm doing it for the rubber stamp and to say you get, 4 or 5 credits for this class. That's been really frustrating for her. And so I want to just give you a heads up. If your child doesn't have a diploma, hasn't done their ACT, SAT, and they're now launching into a formal college education, you've raised an unschooler. You've raised somebody who sees the BS in the system and is not willing to participate in it. And now they are in a college setting where they're going to either have to learn to endure those things, or they're going to have to find a way to work around them, or perhaps college isn't for them. And I think that's totally okay. I know my child has said, I'm willing to jump through these hoops to get me where I want to go, but I'm also going to be really upset and frustrated in the process. And I'm going to express my frustration both to my professors and to you, Mom, because I know that it should be better than this, and it's not. And I have to work within a broken system. I am choosing to participate in a system that's deeply flawed and that has lots of inefficiencies in order to get where I want to go. And also, I will say it has helped my kid be much more grateful for all the years that she did not have to participate in institutionalized education. So those of you that have unschooled your kid doesn't need a diploma. Don't stress. Think about a transcript. Think about portfolios. Think about communicating with those colleges that want to work with your kid. Also, think about preparing your child for the reality of entering an institutional educational setting for perhaps the first time in their life, and what that may look like, and how you as an unschooling parent can best support them. Thank you for watching this 4-part series. If you have the privilege to unschool, I hope you know that that privilege extends beyond age 18 for many of our kids. There's no rush. We are family members supporting each other. Just because your kid is launching off into college doesn't mean they don't need your support as an unschooled parent. And it doesn't mean that you can't help facilitate their individual educational journey. What is important is helping your child become a functional, healthy adult who is free to chase their dreams and to make the world a better place. Thank you for watching today. I hope that if you haven't checked out my other videos on parenting and unschooling, that you will check them out down in the description. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you are unschooling younger kids and you have questions, please drop them in the comments. I'm always looking for topics that I can cover and questions that I can answer in the future with regards to unschooling. Please consider checking out my Patreon down below as well, and clicking like and subscribe. I'll be back really soon. Thanks.